Disclaimer: this show is not for the faint of heart or the easily offended. The views expressed here are that of the show hosts only, and not their wives, girlfriends, husbands, boyfriends, polygamous partners, employers, music artists, businesses, or anyone other than the Cognitive Dissolutions podcasters. The explicit tag is there for a good reason. Please proceed with caution.
Every one of us will have to decide whether or not we want to keep this great republic or whether we're willing to sacrifice it and surrender it to tyranny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Cognitive Dissolutions podcast, where we address the current issues of today with brash humor, skepticism, or aggression to invoke critical thinking in the masses. We take our tightly held beliefs, everyone's tightly held beliefs, mash them up with current events, politics, and religion, then throw them to the fires of skepticism. We magnify the so-called logic and then blow it all up. There is no green zone of safety for a lack of critical thinking. This is episode number 8. We really have no real topics, and it's past Christmas and New Year's, so fuck yeah. Your hosts today are Joel, John, and I'm Al, and we are your tormentors. How are you both doing today?
I've got popcorn, man. I'm awesome.
I've got a new guitar amp. I'm doing pretty awesome too.
Fucking A, sweet. So Yeah, that's how it works. It's real easy. You just kind of open it up and slide it in.
Yeah.
A bit of innuendo there.
Sure.
Innuendo? Wow, we're kicking this fucker off.
We just went right down the...
Speaking of shoving things in your end, what do you guys think about this whiteness thing going on in Oregon? What is that, pcc.edu?
Yeah, it's Portland Community College.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of bullshit. I know that it's a topic that you had brought up initially, and after reading what PCC said, it really kind of pathetic. I mean, I think Morgan Freeman, when he was interviewed about Black History Month, he hit it right on the head. Why would you want to relegate human history down to a single month, regardless of the race?
How can you argue with God?
Well, I tend not to argue with imaginary fictional creatures, but that's just me.
He's only played God in, 4 movies?
I think that's probably accurate.
So. Yeah, that's probably sadly accurate.
I think if I was going to choose anybody, I'd probably be him.
Well, he does a good job at it.
Yeah.
He portrays the character well.
And he can get you shit in jail. Sorry.
So PCC's official release, a portion of it that caught my attention, and I'm going to quote them directly, and this is from their website, pcc.edu. It said, "Whiteness is a socially and politically constructed behavior. It is a long history of European imperialism and epistemologies. Whiteness does not simply refer to skin color, but an ideology based on belief, value, behaviors, habits, and attitudes, which result in the unequal distribution of power and privilege based on skin color." What the fuck? Last time I checked, I was white, and that doesn't really change my power level.
Not to mention that within that statement, and I'm pretty sure that was the part of the mission statement kind of part of it, right? Or
this was a sub-article, subsection in the article.
Okay, yeah, so it directly contradicts itself right in the premise, just in that it doesn't have to do with whiteness. And then what was the last line you said? It doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do with skin color, and then at the end it said something about being white.
Yeah, it says whiteness does not simply refer to skin color, and if you were to dot that out, and then say, which results in unequal distribution of power privilege based on skin color.
So that doesn't make any sense. I will say, just to kick it off, the idea of imperialism in Western culture, and all that's gone into what we've done, not we, but what Western civilization has done throughout the world, those are all true things for certain and need to be addressed. But to further charge this and just really crap on any ability or any semblance, I should say, of objectivity, and then name it something that charged is just irresponsible, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, they follow up with whiteness represents a position of power where the power holder defines social categories and realities, the master narrator. Whiteness originates racism. It is relational, quote-unquote, white, quote, end quote, only exists in opposition to the other categories in the racial hierarchy produced by whiteness. What the fuck does that mean?
I don't know.
Sounds like
I guess.
shit to me.
Yeah. It's true, and it's a deepity. It's true on one level, but really ultimately meaningless.
Well, hold on.
It's true on no levels. What they've done is they've basically taken the idea of imperialism, conquest, colonialism, and the American enterprise, and they've slapped a term on it and called it whiteness. It's not about being white. It's not even about privilege. It's about who's in power at what time and for how long. The Chinese did it to their own people. The Chinese did it to everybody in Asia. Yeah. The Persians tried to do it all over Europe and the Middle East, and then the Greeks kicked their asses back into Persia where they belong.
Hold on. If you thought that was a deepity before, this next part is going to totally just wrangle your mind for a minute. Whiteness is a state of consciousness, often invisible, shaping how white people view themselves and others, thus perpetrating ignorance throughout communities. Cultural racism is found in the belief that, quote-unquote, whiteness is the universal and allows one to think and speak as if whiteness describes and define the world.
It's so funny to me. It's funny to me because clearly the society in which we live, this is an issue. Racism is an issue. Systemic racism is an issue. Yet they're trying to talk about the history of the world, right? I'm really having a hard time understanding where this is coming from, because they're showing their subjectivity of where they are in the world, but yet trying to say that this is all of the world and throughout all of history. It's a direct contradiction. Am I making sense here?
You are. They aren't.
Well, okay. There are some learning areas and essential questions here on their website that may give us a little more in depth as to what exactly they hope to accomplish by this. Their questions are broken into 4 categories: context, consequences, change, and project benefits. Which would you like to hear first?
Fucking spin the wheel is stupid. I don't care.
Let's just go down the fucking retarded list.
All right, let's start with context. Here's question number 1. What is whiteness, and how is it socially constructed? That's actually a very brilliant question, because I have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
Do they answer it, or is that just the scope of their quest?
No, this is the scope of their quest. They hope to determine what whiteness is and how it is socially constructed.
So wait a minute. They're formulating answers with questions that they already have a construct for.
They're making the question.
They're trying to backpedal exactly. They're trying to backpedal till they find one.
Sure. Yeah. This is social engineering at its finest, guys. Check this out. So the next question: in what ways has whiteness been institutionalized, imposed, and internalized?
Well, if you can't define it right off the bat, then you can't then argue a point based on a lack of definition in the first place.
Well, here's the description of the project. We didn't read this yet. Let's go through this real quick. There's 3 sentences. Whiteness History Month project, unlike Heritage Months, is not a celebratory endeavor. It is an effort to change our campus climate. The project seeks to challenge the master narrative of race and racism through an exploration of the social construction of whiteness. Challenging the master narrative of traditional curriculum is a strategy within higher education that promotes multicultural education and equity.
I really wish we had somebody at the forefront of this movement on the podcast.
I'm really fucking confused right now.
Well, I got a little bit of this when I was at Evergreen. They gave us there was this underlying theme of, I'm not going to say putting white people down because that's not exactly what happened, but a definite awareness of privilege and power structures based on human nature. Really, I mean, it's human nature to want to be around people who think the way you do, who act the way you do, who look the way you do. There's a very good reason that men have a tendency to marry women that look a little bit like their mothers, because that's what they look like, because that's what they've looked at their whole life. That is the exemplar of womanhood. So, whether you know it or not, in one way, shape, or form, the woman that you're married to is probably your mother in one way, shape, or form. I'm not saying it is your mother, but she acts like your mother. She looks like your mother, same hair color, same eye color. Something is a little bit like your mother. It may just be a coincidence, but there is something to be said for familiarity with word itself.
Crap! I just stepped in some Freud. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't suffer from any Oedipus complex whatsoever. But thank you.
I'm not talking about an Oedipus complex. I'm talking about a familiarity thing. This has to do with people in general. This is human nature. You want to be around people that are like you. It's the echo chamber. People like echo chambers. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel as if they know something, and everybody around them agrees. Hey, you're right. You know what? I agree with you, dude. You are on the right track. I mean, you can't tell me that pisses you off when somebody says that.
Sure. It does sometimes, depending on the topic.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that one. But
my point is, I understand the whole tribalism concept, because that's what this is arguing, is tribalism.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to break from tribalism and expand people's minds. But to expand people's minds, you don't then box their mind. And that's what this is doing. This is saying, well, we're going to do a White History Month because, Whitey is evil and the man and causing problems. No, that's not how you expand people's multiculturalism. That's not how you expand their consciousness to include other people.
Would we say that institutional racism in our culture, in America, and well, really, that's the only thing I have to pull from with any experience. It is an issue. We would agree with that.
I think what the bigger issue is here is we are trying to redefine our nature, and we're trying to redefine, or at least these people, and most liberals in general, try to redefine their history, their culture, their person into what they think it should be now. Rather than not necessarily celebrating, but at least being aware of and respecting what it was. This sort of thing shows a marked disrespect for the process that put, for example, America on the top of the whatever national order it's on. It's just an example. I mean, England did it 100 years ago. France did it before England, and of course, Germany did it before that. So, I mean, this is not a systemic American problem. This is not a systemic European problem. This is a systemic human problem. The desire to be on top of something, the desire to be. It's pride. I mean, pride is one of the 7 deadly sins for a reason, because you can easily get away with it. It can easily overcome you and make you a monster. That's the problem, and that's exactly what these people are talking about.
This is getting...
I don't accept that. I just don't.
I'm at a loss. Here's the thing, okay? And I think we can come together on this, so to speak. There certainly are power structures within any society, and really, again, I only feel comfortable talking about the society in which I find myself by accident. There are power structures that are, I think, that need to be challenged, okay? I do think that that's the case. I think that there is definitely, in my experience, a culture of racism among a lot of people, and it's hard to tell because we have a situation where sometimes I don't know what I don't know. I don't understand necessarily how to see things from a different perspective, because my perspective is my perspective, and I certainly want to expand my perspective. But it just seems like what we've done is we've just re-pigeonholed this thing that we've been trying to break out of, right, guys? I mean, we're putting it back in the box.
Are we?
Not we, but this idea that this is how we're going to attack this, or not attack. This is how we're going to deal with these cultural discrepancies in all facets of life, whether economic or education or what have you. And now we've got the liberals, the regressives, that are trying to they're trying to rein everything back into kind of where it was before in a backhanded way, instead of every person deciding that, let's talk. My question is, why don't we start just looking at everybody as people? Why don't we get back to that narrative where we're saying that we need to stop thinking about these things in those terms and evolving past it, instead of I'm so shocked at how this all is happening. I don't even know what to say. I'm just rambling on.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying. This is not a race thing. This is a human nature thing. There is no fixing it. The only way to fix it is to make us not what we are, is to make us something that we aren't.
Well, and that's my concern with this whole thing, is it's saying, whiteness and white people, and this is how white is. And that's not how the majority of white is.
No, I mean, there's ample evidence in the world to suggest that white people are not the only people that dominate each other. I mean, it's not even a matter of dominating each other. I mean,
well, and it's not we're not the only group, we're not the only subsect of human society that is racist either.
Well, no, absolutely not.
So,
well, it's identity politics again.
I would understand approaching this like Joel said, and I think you've also said in this, John, that we need to address this as a human problem, not as a white problem.
Yeah.
Because putting a white label on it is just like saying that all criminals are black. And that's not true, but you're saying that to reinforce an ideology that isn't accurate.
And it's what it's saying is that not all criminals are black, but criminality is blackness, right? Is that not the sort of the flip side of this coin?
That's exactly it.
And that's it's just not how is that helpful?
I think it's bigger than that, though. I think what this project is that they're doing, I think what this is trying to do is to redefine, people who do not have those benefits of being in power, whatever power structure exists. If if I'm a part of that because I'm white, I have no idea where the benefits are, but whoever's a part of that, the other people, the people who are not a part of that or who don't feel like they're a part of that, those people are what this is focusing on and trying to make them feel good about themselves.
Let me just say this, because I touched on it very briefly, but I want to kind of put this in more depth. This really is, again, identity politics run amok. So, and what I mean by that is there are people that identify with some struggle, whatever that is, racism, the social issues that we have, I can't remember the name of the word, but so they're just as invested in this paradigm continuing, even though they claim to be fighting it, because this is how they've defined their entire political view of the world, is fighting this thing. So they actually are not interested in solving the problem. They're interested in continuing this dynamic, this thing that they're quote unquote fighting, instead of actually trying to solve the problem. They're invested in the problem.
Well, I think they're trying to open a dialogue about it. I mean, and I can understand that, but I think
they're trying to shut it down. I think they're doing the exact opposite. I think they're not trying to open a dialogue. They're trying to put people back on their heels and keep this thing alive. Keep us from actually progressing, and that's why they are, in my opinion, regressives, because their goal is to keep us from progressing. Because once we start making headway in some of these social issues, we truly, as a society, make headway in these issues, these people don't know who to be anymore.
When have we ever made progress in these issues?
I think that the progressive movement was going in a good direction, and it has stopped. It has gone so far over that it's actually going backwards.
Why did it stop?
I honestly don't know. I wish I could understand that.
Can you think of some events in the news that have led you to believe that the progressive movement somehow stalled or stopped?
Well, I do. I mean, recently, we've talked about some of them on the podcast. Some of the crazy things going on school campuses. I don't know what some of the catalysts were that led to that, but it's just it's the ever present pendulum effect that we have. No one just seems to want to actually get down to a happy medium at any time. Everyone always wants to push it farther until all of a sudden, shit, we're right back on the other side, experiencing the same kinds of things. Upside down, though. Instead of letting the pendulum just chill in the middle.
Is it ever going to do that, though? I mean, as long as there's somebody in the world, or in America for that matter, who feels like they're being left out, as long as there is anyone who feels that way, the pendulum is not going to rest. The only way
right. The thing though that we should all sort of take into our minds is that we have sort of, there's a reason why we have conservatives and liberals, right? There's a reason why we have these polar ideas, and that is, the goal is to create a balance. So you've got conservatives, they want to conserve, they don't want a lot of change. They just want things to just be a certain way, right? That's what conservatism is. And progressive liberalism is constantly moving forward towards something, And so when you have any one of these things run amok, either stagnation or just constantly moving forward, careless of where or what direction we're heading in, then we're going to keep doing this. And so it would be nice to see some people realize that things aren't going to be ever going to be perfect. Like you're saying, things aren't ever going to be perfect, but we don't have to keep pushing as hard as we can to move forward, or holding on as hard as we can to keep things the same. Just be reasonable about these things.
Well, absolutely. And I don't know a single conservative who thinks that change can be stopped. That things are constantly changing. Conservatives are okay with change. What they're not okay with is change that is so fast that human nature doesn't have a chance to catch up with it.
Human nature doesn't have a chance to catch up to it, and we don't take the time to look at the potential consequences and see where these things might lead. I get it.
And what progressives, in my opinion, what progressives generally want, what liberal progressives are looking for, is a solution to their problem right now. I'm only going to live a certain number of years. I want to see the fruit of my labor.
I think that's true.
And that's where the struggle is at. It's between let's do this, but let's take it in baby steps on the one hand, and well, now wait a minute, our lives are only so long. We need to get a move on.
Depending on the topic, and this is where we all disagree on. Depending on the topic, you're describing both quote unquote polar groups.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it. Again, this is an issue that needs to be viewed as a human problem, not as a racial or constructed in a racial box, in my opinion. It's too fluid a topic.
Well, as long as we as humans want to be around people who think and look and act the way we do, as long as we want to feel as if we are right about something, this is not going to be fixed. This is why we have political parties. This is why we think of race at all, is to polarize ourselves and to find people that are like us.
See, I think that we're moving, at least the secular community seems to be moving towards viewing people as human nature and moving away from the racial divides.
I don't agree anymore. I see so much. I don't agree that the secular community, by and large, is looking at it that way anymore. I know we are, you and I, Al, but I am seeing a lot of vitriol out of the secular progressives in that regard.
Really?
I really am. I mean,
unpack that a little bit, and I'll see if I can agree with you.
Well, I'd rather you disagree, so I can learn something. But just what I'm seeing online is, we've got the secularists, I guess, where basically to define that a little bit, just people that aren't taking into account a religious ideology of any kind. Okay. And a lot of the people at the forefront of what so many have termed regressive liberalism they certainly meet that criteria of being secular by nature. So I actually feel far more involved in that fight than I do even against the people I'm diametrically opposed, because these are supposed to be my people. These are supposed to be the people that I agree with, and I just see them not doing any things in a productive way. I wish I could unpack that better.
Maybe it's the groups that we hang around, maybe, that we're seeing different sides of it. We certainly have
our own bubbles, yeah.
Well, if CNN and MSNBC are any indicator of what the unaligned community is trying to push, I'm honestly kind of on the fence on what you're talking about there, Joel, because I honestly, when you talk about secular, that's a pretty big network of what's going on there. I mean, let's face it, there's a growing community of what are called nuns in the religious community, and I'm not talking about NUN, I'm talking about NONES.
Right, they don't hold religious viewpoints or separate from churches, but still hold some sort of deistic viewpoints.
Exactly. And those people are very quickly joining your ranks. So when you're talking about the secular community, you're talking about people who are not affiliated with a quote-unquote religion, which I would challenge that as well, because patriotism is a religion. Adhering to your race, white supremacy has been called a religion from time to time by some rather respectable people. So when you're talking about religion, you're talking about a very wide variety of topics, and when you're talking about a lack of religion, you're talking about a wide variety of people.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I would define, and I guess so maybe this will help you understand how I formulated my comment. I define a secular person as someone that doesn't use a religious ideology to guide their worldview. Okay. Now I can't define patriotism as a religion or white supremacist as a religion. I can't do that.
So you just described me, though.
Well, see, that's where Joel and I divide on that definition. Because
John,
I would
you
say,
can be secular. You can be secular and still be religious to some extent. It just, you can have secular views while being religious, right? If you
not
believe
by the definition you just gave us.
No. You can have a worldview, right? Like how to deal with politics and law, and not have to bring into play your religious belief structure to guide that. I don't know that you're able to do that, John. I think it's really ingrained in you, the Christian narrative to inform your decisions in politics, right?
I don't know. I have a tendency to really piss people off when it comes to religion.
Well, you've confounded us a number of times.
I honestly consider myself more secular than religious. I despise religion with a burly purple passion. Any kind of organized system of law and order has its problems, and when you're talking about people's belief or disbelief in the afterlife, one or the other, honestly, you're treading on some really. It gets very manipulative very quickly.
Yeah,
and I can't abide that. I can't agree with that narrative at all. So no, I don't think that my decision making process is certainly influenced by the morals and ethics that are taught by Christianity, but they're the same morals and ethics that are taught by Buddhism. They're just using a different language. They're using different words. Even in the English language, they use different words to describe the same concepts.
Yeah. Well, without telling you what you believe, John, because I would never do that, I'm still not sold that you're even deistic. I think you're an atheist. You just don't know it yet.
I'll let you have your hopes. I'll let you have your hopes, and I'll pray for your clarity of thought.
Please don't. Don't pray for me.
Please do. If I'm wrong, I want to know it. But I don't think I am.
Well, I don't want somebody to pray for me. If they can prove that I'm wrong and prove that their viewpoint actually is supported by observable, testable, independently verifiable evidence, I'm more than happy to look at the evidence. But, until then, I'm not going to believe shit. Anyway, without going into that, that was sort of a sidetrack. But so we've got this whole whiteness thing going on right now, and the whole, almost religiously zealotous viewpoint of, how whiteness needs to be preserved. And you've got this almost religious zealotism, this enthusiasm, but you're seeing the same thing in another part of our history that's occurring right now, and that's on January 20th, ISIS members over in Iraq, over in Mosul, destroyed St. Elijah's Monastery, which has been there for 14,000 years.
1,400.
1,400. I stand corrected. I added another zero to my brain. And they destroyed this monastery over there in Mosul that's more of a history piece for the population. It's not really a religious icon, but their religious zealotism of us versus them have forced them into a position where they destroyed a piece of their own history. Did you guys read that article?
I did.
Yeah.
In a big way, I think that's a lot of what these whiteness people are trying to do as well. They're trying to not just erase history, but change the narrative of history. Perhaps not in quite the same way, but in a big way, I think the end result could be the same. You know, when you're talking about the ISIS idiots over there blowing up, I mean, let's face it, they took a sledgehammer to 5,000-year-old Babylonian artifacts that have sat there in the sand waiting for us to find them and admire the artistic abilities of the ancients. And we come from Western civilization. You, me, Joel, we come from Western civilization, and Western civilization is built on those histories over there. You know, the ancient Sumeria, ancient Egypt, that is where we derive our culture. That is where we derive, ultimately, the concept of civilization. And it just, from those 2 points, you can find a direct lineage of ideas, of cultures, of the progress of civilization. You can find a direct lineage. It's a really big family tree, and there's a lot of branches there, but that's where it all comes from. And these guys are destroying it because they disagree right now with what those things look like. And that's, in a big way, that's what these whiteness people are doing too. They're looking at the social structures of the past, they're seeing them today, and they're saying, no, I don't agree with that, I'm going to dismantle that.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it by using the terminology of progress, because it's not the agenda of the Islamists and the extremists to be progressive as a society in any way. They really do want to destroy any notion of such things, and
well, they want to dominate.
They want to dominate. That's yes, and through their dominance, they want their idea of basically regression to take hold. And what better way to do that than the whole, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. So that's what they want. I mean, they don't want us to learn. They don't want the people over there learning that, yeah, we've been through that stuff before and it didn't work out, so we need to do another way. They want to keep their power, and that's how they do that, is to keep people ignorant of the fact that these things have occurred time and time again throughout human history.
I think that's a great point, because they are destroying evidence that another group of people that disagreed with their viewpoint existed there. Granted, it happened to be Christian, monastery, but that's kind of irrelevant.
I've actually been there. That was a really nice site. I mean, when we were there, we actually put a fence around it, and we kept everyone out of it. We did guided tours from time to time. There was a guy in the area who really knew the ruins, and he had been there for a while. He was a local, and he was the tour guide. And in his place, I doubt that guy's even alive right now. ISIS has probably found him and killed him, or he's fled.
Hopefully the latter.
Hopefully, yeah, exactly. But the site itself was beautiful. I mean, for 1,400 years old, it looked like. I mean, if either of you guys ever been to California, you've seen the any of the missions up and down the California coast. Yeah. It looks like that. It looks like those, and in the same kind of condition. Huh. And these guys blew it up just because it was there.
Yeah, it's
incredibly sad, and it really, one thing I can't help but just be fascinated by from time to time are all those amazing things that we've lost to history for reasons of zealotry or just sheer apathy. towards other cultures. I can't even imagine some of the things that I don't know about, that none of us will ever know about, that we've lost to people throwing their little fucking temper tantrums.
Well, and I absolutely agree with you. In Christianity, my pet project, Christianity, is just as guilty as anyone else. I mean, let's face it. For 1,000 years, easily from the 1600s to the 1800s, or I'm sorry, from the 600s to the 1800s, Christianity was on the top of its game, and everywhere it went, it squashed anything that disagreed with it, either democratically or imperialistically. And make no mistake,
usually with fire.
Usually with fire, yes. Make no mistake, religions can be imperial too. Christianity is a perfect example. The current ISIS thing is another good example. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. The reason it could be a good thing is because it does spread education. I don't know that it spreads the kind of education that needs to be spread, but in the process of spreading education, you create the opportunity for other things. I mean, here's another. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but here's another short history lesson for you. I challenge you to tell me that the Enlightenment would have happened if it weren't for the Protestant Reformation. If Catholicism had kept its hold on Europe, would the Enlightenment have happened?
No, but if Catholicism had never taken hold in the first place, we would be 1,000 years more advanced.
If Catholicism had never taken over in the first place, something else would have.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't really say that with any certainty that it wouldn't have been some other thing. I mean, you hope.
No, I can make shit up.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Stacy, the guitar player the other guitar player in my band, he's got a term for that called MSUs, making shit up.
Yep.
I love it.
And there's plenty of history out there that we don't have that we may never know, but we're finding those things very slowly, and unfortunately a lot of that is going on in ISIS territory. Are you guys aware that in just 2012 we found, not we, but researchers in Syria found ruins that are 12,000 years old. Now these are not mud huts.
Hold on, no, the Earth's only 6,000 years old. Come on now. Sorry.
Just gonna let the crickets speak for me.
You just fried his brain there for a minute.
I just hammed it up.
Stupid stick.
Did you guys get that one? I hammed it up. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another bacon joke. See that? So.
Well, no, it was canned ham. Anyways.
But this is.
I caught it, Joel. It's cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Civilization's been around in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different places, for fucking ever, okay? There is no time in this world's history when you cannot find a form of civilization, going all the way back as far as you want to go, even back to the very first life forms on this planet. Even amoeba have civilization of a sort. They have society of a sort. They interact with each other. Wherever there are interactions between living organisms, you've got an economy. And when you've got an economy, you've got civilization. I'll stop rambling now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, because, John, you have a background in history, and I often find myself thinking about World War I, and to a lesser extent World War II, maybe not, I don't know. But World War I think about quite a bit, and I got to think that there were a lot of things that were blown up in World War I that I don't know about and may never get the opportunity to learn about, that was lost to war in that way. Things like, a wonder of the world, or who knows what.
There was quite a bit that was lost in World War II that we are aware of.
Yeah.
In World War I, the historical emphasis, what people were writing about, was not about the loss of culture. They were writing about being on top. I mean, we're talking about the Wilson administration. Mm-hmm. We're talking about, this was the 1910s, 1920s. There was a lot going on that we really didn't care about lost art. We didn't care about lost books. But I mean, on the same topic, I mean, we are not the only ones who are guilty of that. Again, the Germans in World War I and in World War II are not the only ones that are guilty of it. We love Rome for what they did for Western civilization, but Rome destroyed that. Julius Caesar destroyed the Library at Alexandria. What kind of information was lost there?
Oh, every time I think about that, I literally want to cry. Just
Alexander the Great, before him, Alexander the Great, the guy who created Alexandria, destroyed libraries in Persia as he went through them. He destroyed libraries in India when he arrived there, shortly before his death. The process of being on top of things is, again, what we're talking about. When the Wilson administration walked into France and dominated the topic of peace, that was America asserting itself, making itself important, putting itself on top. And that's the kind of self-esteem that we're talking about. If you can't find something to make you feel good about yourself as a person, as a community, as a society, as a race, if you want to go there, it really doesn't matter. If you can't find something to have some self-esteem about, you're going to look at somebody who does have self-esteem and want what they have. And you're going to destroy things in order to get it.
And maybe an analogy that you guys might be able to agree with. It's as though the world has one book, one sort of finite amount of pages in which to have culture. Okay, and what we're seeing is the people whomever have power at any given time in this finite area of pages, they feel that they need to create room so that only their culture that displays their dominance is in that book. So they erase everything that's in there so they can put their stuff on top of it. And no one has ever in any kind of a benevolent way who was simultaneously had enough power had ever considered the fact that in any meaningful way that maybe we can figure out a way to add more pages to this book and build and progress.
Honestly, for the most part, I don't see anything about America that isn't about adding to the pages. We don't tell, for example, Mexican immigrants that they can't fly a Mexican flag over their house. There's no law against that. There's no law that says you can't fly an African flag over your house. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, our culture is different. I mean, we're better than a lot of other cultures have been in that respect.
I think as society has progressed over the past 40, 50 years, going on the American model, the Western concept of doing that, we have moved past what you're saying of the dominant cultures ripping out the pages or erasing the pages, and we've gone more towards the quote-unquote digital text where we can go as long as we want, as long as we have room.
Yeah.
And we are moving towards that. Unfortunately, there are religions and political groups out there and people out there that are still stuck in that 1400-year mindset, that Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age mentality.
Don't pin that on religion. Those are individuals within those groups, not the religion itself.
No, I said religions, I said politics, I said people.
Okay.
I made sure to span it because I'm not saying that all Christians are bad just because I think Christianity is bad.
And again, I think we don't need to.
Islam is bad. I don't think all Muslims are bad.
Yeah, and we can. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that we disagree with an ideology and not necessarily have any kind of loathing for the people that practice it.
That I can agree with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel that way. I have a lot of room for love in my heart for all kinds of people. So, but ideas, those are the things that, we need to be able to talk about. We need to be able to explore, and ideologies are ideas. So, yeah, we've talked about that ad nauseum, so I guess we don't need to.
And that's what we're kind of circling back into. I think we've talked these ideas to death and these topics to death. What do you guys think?
Well, I want to ask John, just throwing out a softball here, see if he'll hit it. Are there any things that you know of that maybe the average person isn't aware of through a normal education that we've lost to history that you want to maybe talk about a little bit?
Ask the question again.
So you know how I brought up World War I? Mm-hmm. In my imagination, it seems feasible that we could have lost an Eiffel Tower or something of that majesty that no one even knows about anymore. Do you have any things that come to mind that maybe you can teach us that we've lost through war or something of that nature? I guess that's really the only thing I can think of. War would be the only thing I think of that would really do that, cause something like that. But
oh no, war is not the only thing that does that. Economy does that.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Corporate warfare can be just as damaging as overt warfare. I can tell you that you know what, you mentioned World War I. Let's talk about the Wilson administration. What do you know about Woodrow Wilson? What can you tell me about President Woodrow Wilson?
He was after Roosevelt, right?
No, he was actually before Roosevelt. Well, he was after Teddy.
No. Teddy. I'm talking about Teddy.
Yes, he was after Teddy.
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson, in a big way, created America. He made America what it is. His foreign policies in Latin America and in Europe really put us at the top of the both military and economic spectrum. In the Soviet Union, before 1989, in the Soviet Union, Soviet children would learn why the Soviet Union despised America so much, and the reason why is Woodrow Wilson. Did you know that the United States occupied St. Petersburg for close to 12 years during the Bolshevik Revolution?
I did not.
And you probably wouldn't if I hadn't have told you, but look it up. Look up Woodrow Wilson on Wikipedia if you want, and just do an overview of his administration. He sent troops over there, a couple of divisions, in order to occupy and try and put down the Bolshevik Revolution. He saw it as a threat. He saw communism as a threat because we are a capitalist society. We like capitalism. Wilson was a huge fan of capitalism, and right before Wilson, you've got Teddy Roosevelt, who is famous for putting down the monopolists, the people like Rockefeller and Carnegie. In particular, Roosevelt was one of the bigger movers and shakers of trying to break up Standard Oil. But those people, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, they built America. And that's not just a History Channel quote. That is a reality. They created the infrastructure that we use today. And they were all white. And they were all in power. And they all had the equivalent of billions of dollars. These are the people that we despise today. These are the people that these anti-whiteness folk are talking about. And yet they are the movers and shakers. They are the progressives that make America what it is. Now, if you want to look at that and say, that was in the past, we've gone beyond that, I think you're fooling yourself. I think if you can look at a white racist son of a bitch like Woodrow Wilson and say, he's what's wrong with America, then everything that America is today is also wrong. Our foreign policy is built on us being on top. If we are not on top, then we don't have a foreign policy because we can't negotiate. As long as somebody has an upper hand on us in anything at all, it makes negotiation not just difficult, but next to impossible, simply because we're the big dog on the block. When other countries look at us, they look at us the same way that these anti-white people look at this whiteness culture that they're talking about. They see us as the people that are in power. That's one of the problems with ISIS. They see America as interfering. And that's why they hate us. That's why Iran hates us, because we've interfered with Iran so many times in the past that they see us as the big bad bully enemy.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the only issue. I mean, when you got Ahmadinejad and the supreme leader over there, both are 13ers, an Islamic sect of end timers. That's the primary the primary view why they hate America.
That's not the narrative that they use with their people, though.
No,
the personal
but it's
ideologies
the
are
reality of it.
You know what? I'll buy that in the case of Iran, but in general, I think that in a big way, when you talk about progress, you're talking about the wealthy. You're not talking about the poor. You're not talking about the disenfranchised. You're not talking about the disaffected. You're talking about the wealthy. No matter what you do in history, one thing that history has taught me is that no matter what you're looking at, you're always looking at the wealthy in history. And I'll clarify that real quick because it needs to be clarified. The poor people, the people in the trenches, were not writing books. They weren't writing things down at all. The only thing that we have from those people are their artifacts, their hairbrushes, their teeth. We have their receipts. That we have receipts from transactions that occurred in Sumeria 5,000 years ago, but we don't know anything about the people. We know what they bought. We know what they sold. We know a lot about the rulers. We know a lot about the kings, but we don't know jack about the average people living in the trenches. The people living in the trenches now, here in America, are the ones that are having a problem with their situation. And for the first time in human history, because the white racist sons of bitches like Woodrow Wilson made America what it is, for the first time in history, there is a culture in the world, and it exists in Europe, it exists in North America, and to a limited degree, it exists in pockets elsewhere in the world. That culture says, you have a voice, and I want you to be heard. In a big way, the internet is contributing to that because everybody can post on the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
That the internet one day is going to go away, that those voices are one day going to be silenced, and we will never know what they said.
I don't think that's likely. Too many people are fighting for the freedom to communicate via the internet. Too many people are investing in ensuring that either through encryption or through sort of like Tor setup nodes that the communication will continue.
Well, and this is one of my big fears with this digital age that we're entering into. I've got a huge library of paper books. I love them because they tell me about the past. I've got 18 different dictionaries from the same publisher, published 5 or 6 or 10 years apart, just because I like looking at the definitions and how they've changed over the decades. If you looked up a word in a 1950s dictionary, it's maybe completely different from what you find in a dictionary today. And that's the process that I find fascinating. Not who's in power or why they're in power, but what are they saying about being in power. That's what I find fascinating.
And you're not gonna get much when you're in this constant state of revisionist history,
Well, again, that's been going on for centuries too. You talk about what we've
all the time. I understand that is what it is. That is history. History is revisionist history. I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see us acknowledge the reality of things and just capture as much data as we can and analyze those things in an honest way instead of revising what it is. I mean, that's what I guess that's what the theme that I was discussing when I was using the analogy of a book that
you almost sound like a pitchman for the PRISM program for the government. Just
for
saying.
The what?
The PRISM program. Let's just capture all the data. We're not going to edit
Yeah.
it. We're just going to capture it all. It's cool.
Well, I'm sorry. Oh, big yawn.
No, I think in closing,
Jesus Christ, you failed again.
I know.
Closing, I think what I can say on the evening's topic is, you know, in the movie Last of the Mohicans, there's a really great line, and it's the very last line in the movie.
The Last of the Last Mohicans?
Yeah, the Last of the Last Mohicans. The old man says, "But once we were here," and that can be said about so many cultures, so many things. And as a historian, I just hope that these whiteness people in Oregon don't seek to silence voices, because the future will hate them for it.
Well, that's what they appear to be doing. That appears to be the intent. That's just my opinion.
I don't care if the white racist sons of bitches are dicks or not. I want to hear their voice. I don't have to agree with them, but I still want to hear their voice because it tells me what's going on. If we ever forget that, we are in such deep shit, you have absolutely no idea. Because we're just going to do it again.
Agreed.
And on that note, I suppose Al's a racist, and so are the rest of us.
Fuck the rest of you guys.
Yeah, we're all racist, I guess.
Okay, so ending on Al's a racist.
No, ending on Al's a racist, and so are we.